recommend in a hotel. So if you get weird noises, I don't know, from the neighbors, I can't help it. What you won't get is my dogs barking or my cats crawling all over me. So that won't happen. We are here this week with Dr. Katie Woodley. Dr. Woodley, hi.
Thank you so much for having me, Carrie. And maybe I'll provide some entertainment with my cats in the background tonight.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, what are we gonna do without all my cats crawling all over? So, I never know. Like, is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? Like, sometimes I think people are like, oh, she planted those cats.
No, honestly, I think it's one of those things where as like pet parents watching, they enjoy that because it like it's real life. Like every
Yeah.
single one of us. I mean, you're on a Zoom call and the cat like walks by you and sticks their little butt in your face, right? And you're just like moving your head all around. I think all of us can relate to it. And it's like
Yeah.
we're gonna just let them do what they want to do, right? So
Yeah. I guess just let them go. I am now up to 4 cats. So, yeah. I don't know how this keeps happening, but
it's
anyway,
okay. I
so
collected 3 so far.
3. My
3. We're
friend
up to 3. Yep.
you have 3?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, well, I had 3 for the longest time, and then my friend found a kitten in the bush and whatever. But my friend says, Carrie, don't tell people you have 4 cats. Tell them you have 2 pairs. It sounds better.
That's a good way to describe it. So
Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I have 2 pairs now. So, um, anyway, welcome to everybody who's coming in, and so Dr. Woodley and I we're gonna help you guys out with some really cool stuff that we're gonna do while we're talking. But I also want to let you know that this is also your time. So if you have questions for Dr. Woodley, just go ahead and type them in. I'll read them to her so she can focus more on making sure she gives you always her best answers. And she's so good and thorough. You're going to be amazed at how she can answer these questions. So go ahead and type them in anytime. But in the meantime, we were kind of talking backstage, if that's what we want to call it. We were kind of talking backstage about, I see this every day, and I know Dr. Woodley does, where we get this, and we talked about it on the podcast before about what the difference is and the disconnect between a holistic veterinarian and a conventional veterinarian and what they are. But there's one piece to that puzzle that is very, very, very important, and that is you guys, the pet parents, and how you communicate. And so we thought we would kind of talk about that a little bit and help you guys know how to communicate. So, Dr. Woodley,
yeah.
first question to you is, how a pet parent reacts, right? Do you think can make or break the whole meeting?
Yeah, totally. So, when we talk about communication, right, it's about like your posture, the way you're standing. I mean, you can literally cut tension in a room with a knife sometimes, right? And we don't even know that we're doing it sometimes. And I was talking to one of my dear clients earlier, and they hate going to their traditional vet because they're always being scolded. And so her husband comes in and he goes like this. And I was like, they haven't even started talking or doing anything yet. Literally no verbal communication. And what does this tell you?
He's like the security guard.
He's just like, I don't trust you, right? Like, you're like, what do you have for me? I don't want to hear it. And so even just assessing our body posture, and this is where, yes, sometimes that conversation might be a little bit difficult when you're coming in because we're talking 2 different worlds of medicine. We need the conventional side, we need the veterinarian, but they don't know how to speak our language on the other side because they're just not taught it. So it can be very frustrating when you're trying to get your point across and they're just not understanding it. So it's essentially like we're speaking 2 different languages. But one of the things that can be really powerful and helpful is before you even walk into the vet clinic and you're sitting in your car is taking a couple deep breaths, right? There's so much to like breathing that when we get tense and we don't breathe. So just literally taking a couple deep breaths and relaxing. And this is also where I love using essential oils too. So using calming essential oils and just douse yourself in it, right? Yeah. Drink it. No, just kidding. Like putting it all over, right? And then that way too, your vet's going to smell it also. So
we're going to go in with, hold on a minute.
Just a second. I'm going to douse this room for a little bit just to bring the peace back in. But anywho, the thing is like taking those deep breaths and grounding yourself, but also being prepared with questions that you want to ask. if there are studies that you have, having that information with you, because when we're stressed, it's so much harder to find the words that we want. So even if you've practiced and all those things before you've gone in, being as prepped as possible is so important, and remembering to breathe. Now, keep in mind too, your vet truly does want the best for your pet. It's just, once again, they may not be trained in holistic medicine. Most likely they're not, if you're not seeing an integrative or a holistic vet. And they just don't understand. So this is a time to have an open conversation and begin by, not doing this, by sitting there and just, letting them talk, not cutting them off, and vice versa. Right. And of course, I know there's veterinarians that talk down and of course that can happen. I'm not saying that will never happen, but by setting up the scene more appropriately, where there's not that tension, where you're walking in with that and bringing that, your vet's less likely to have their back up and cut the conversation short.
Yeah. I love how you say, if you have studies, maybe bring those with you, because a lot of times if people say, well, I Googled it, or I saw a study, then your vet's obviously going to have resistance to that. They haven't read the study. They don't know who created the study, if it actually is a legitimate study. People seem to use that word a lot, right? Yeah. There was a study by my neighbor.
Yeah, exactly. I studied this on my pet. We did our own research study. Yeah. So yeah, I think, and one of the books too, actually, let me grab it. It's sitting right here, actually. This one is amazing. Feeding Dogs by Dr. Connor Brady. And literally, it's there's so many studies. It's full of research articles. So it's not that expensive. If you're able to, gift it to your veterinarian. And, for Christmas or whatever, this is a great book to give to them. So it gives more validation to why you're feeding a fresh food diet, why you're feeding a raw food diet. And what you can do too, I find this is really helpful. Rather than saying, no, I'm not doing that, you can ask an open-ended question. So what are your thoughts on this? So okay, help me understand more from where you're coming from, because I'm not understanding it. So can you please explain it a little bit better? So rather than, saying, nope, done, we're not doing that, I'm not doing those antibiotics, screw that, say, wait a second, totally understand why you're saying that, but I need some more clarification, because this is where I'm coming from, and I just want to learn a little bit more, because this is why I want to go this route. And that can help diffuse the situation too, by asking those open-ended questions of your veterinarian to get a better idea of why they're using it. Also, for one, it also makes them validate why they're saying something. And what you'll find a lot of times is they're just doing something because it's always been that way. Yeah. So rather than why are we using an antibiotic? I just, is there an infection? Is there a bacteria? I want to, just make sure we're using it appropriately. And this is where you can say, I prefer to do a culture. And by researching, if we are worried about an infection, you can ask those questions, and you can ask your vet explain it, so that you're not just doing something to do something because they're guessing and they don't truly know what's happening.
Oh my gosh, that is just, it's perfect what you just said, especially when we talk about an antibiotic, right? Is there a bacteria? Right? Asking them in a way that says, is there a bacteria? And if they say yes, you could follow up with, do you know the name of the bacteria? Mm-hmm. Because then they're not just assuming they're going to have to pull out the actual test and show you that there's a bacteria and what the name of it is. And so just such great advice about just opening up the lines of communication and leading the vet to where you want to go. Because most your clients particularly, and mine, are becoming more and more educated about understanding. And to be honest, kudos to all you guys. You guys are learning more than your vets know, but they do have that license, and they went to school, and they do care, like Dr. Woodley said. So if you go in there, I know more than you.
Mm-hmm. It's not going to end well.
It's not going to end well. And ultimately what happens is your pet ends up, because and I don't know about everybody who's listening, but sometimes people are in areas where there's only one vet that they can go to. And I know of a case where a woman could only go to one vet because she got kicked out of the other one. There was only two.
That's like a lot of my clients.
Yeah, so now she's down to just no other choice. And so I'm like, you have to get along with your vet. You have to find a way. So hi everybody, as you're coming in, just made it. Hi ladies. I've done that, but I don't know what, I'm lost. I've asked questions before and got the feeling the vet didn't like my questioning her.
So one of the things too that I find also, so if you are in a situation where all of a sudden you've got like a bag of prescription food, you've got the antibiotics, and you're like, oh my gosh, you've got the flea and tick preventatives, like you're just like everything, right? You're walking out and you're like, what just happened? And this is where also too, you can always say, if your vet's going down that path, you can say, you know what? I truly appreciate your opinion and your advice, but I'm going to need a couple, like 24, maybe 48 hours to think about it. And then I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to walk out with all that stuff. You can always say, I just need to think about it. You know, as long as your pet's stable, of course, and you're able to do that, but go home, think about it, do the research and start figuring out, is this the best option? Or should we be doing additional tests? Because then you can come back to the vet and go, you know, I thought a little bit about it. Thank you so much for giving me the space that I needed. Yeah. You know, I was wondering, could we do these additional diagnostics first before we start these medications? And that conversation's a lot easier too. And the vet's less likely to have their back up, because I see like when we're questioned. So I know like there's a whole like the psychology behind it, right? This is where ego comes into play, because it's like, oh, they don't think I'm an authority on this topic. That's why they're questioning me. So we can't change the way people are with their egos, right? But it's something where if you're asking questions, remember, you are the guardian of your pet. It is very important that you are asking questions. And just because they don't like it, see how they're responding, take that breath, and maybe see if you can reword the question that you're asking. So it's, once again, a more open-ended question, and it's involving the veterinarian and being able to explain why and what they're doing. And it can result in a lot better conversation. It may not always result in what you want at the end, but at least you can have that conversation versus both parties like being totally shut down, closed off. It's just like the end, the text in there checking you out now, and you're like, it's done, your appointment's over, and you didn't really get the things you needed to get done to rule out what's actually going on with your pet.
Yeah. I told you guys you were gonna get amazing advice from Dr. Woodley. I love that you say don't take like very few things are immediate, right? Like if you don't take these antibiotics starting at 6 o'clock tonight, your dog's not going to usually die the next day. Like you can assess that. But I love that you say, just leave it on the table, go home, get comfortable with your decision. And maybe, when you first start a relationship with a veterinarian, just let them know, listen, I'm very holistic, but I know that I can work with you. But everything's going to take me like a 24 hours to think about it, and kind of set them up for the fact that this is always how it's going to be. How do you think about booking 2 appointments? I tell people, book back-to-back appointments so that you're not rushed out of the vet hospital.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my appointments I do are longer anyways,
right.
But I mean, you have 15 minutes in a traditional vet clinic,
right.
And there's no way you can do you can get information in that type of setting. And so, I mean, you have a pet that's sick, and like I said, the cat will come. So you have a pet that's sick, and it's your first initial consult with a veterinarian. If you can book definitely back to back, hopefully their sick visits are longer, but not always. I've worked in clinics where I had 15 minutes and I was booked solid back to back to back. And this was when I was a new grad, and that was the worst thing ever, because this is where you're like, well, I've got to do something. This is where you're reaching for the drugs. You're reaching for the pain medicine. You're just like shoving it out, right? Because you're like, I got to do something to help them. I don't have enough time to like work this up properly. And that might be the situation where your vet is, and they're not allowed to increase their time or get behind. I mean, this is happening. I've been in those situations where you have metrics to hit. And if you're not hitting those metrics, they're going to be sitting you down in that office talking to you. And so 100%. I love that idea, Carrie, is book those back-to-back consultations. And that way you're not as rushed. You're not feeling overwhelmed. Your vet can do a proper job of working them up the way that they know how to work up cases.
Yeah.
And you can have a more open conversation and be feeling a lot better.
Yeah, I think the vet will appreciate it. Like
Yes.
all vets want to do a good job. Like there's no vets out there that are going, I can't wait to rush this client out and not help their pet.
No.
There's just that little disconnect on how we go about it. And I love your idea of buying the book for your vet for Christmas or something. And she's not trying to.
Oh no, I like make nothing off of this. This is not my own book.
Well, not only that, I don't think she's looking for Christmas gifts either.
Oh, no. I've got my book. We're good. So
all of a sudden you're going to get all these books sent to you for Christmas.
Well, if you send it, I'll share it with my clients. So,
yeah.
Or, local, I'll go to CSU and drop them off at the vet school over there. So
yeah, what a really amazing idea though. Like how, even like before your pet is sick, before anything, just a nice little Christmas gift or birthday, their birthday. I can't remember which vet. I want to say it's Dr. Roman that, in fact, I'm positive it is her. Her whole holistic thing started by a woman who pushed her.
You're right. Yeah, that is
who pushed her and gave her a book and said, please, I'm begging you to help me. You're my only hope, Obi-Wan. I'm not even a Star Wars fanatic. I don't know why that came out, but it was that book that changed her entire course of her veterinary career. So don't, if you have that book, if you have like Dr. Woodley's book that she has, what was the name of the book? I know that.
I'll type it in here. Feeding Dogs by Dr. Connor Brady.
Yeah, Lori will type it in for you. Well, you can you're fast. I can't, but she's Lori types all that stuff in for us. But there's lots of good books. And if you run across one that you think is right, I mean.
Yeah, so Dr. Jean Dodds also has amazing books too. So she actually has a thyroid book for, so if your dog has hypothyroidism or you're being told that they might have it and you're not feeling comfortable about that diagnosis, because that can be common where our thyroids drop when there's other diseases going on, you do not want to be putting that pet on Siloxane or thyroid medication. But what you can do is, because you have this information, you go, let's go down this path. Here's a book about thyroid disease that I found really helpful. I want to do this full thyroid panel through Michigan State University or HemoPet. And your vet goes, oh, wait a second. And here's the thing. Every time we do that, we are planting the seeds. And that's why I love my clients work with conventional vets. So I take care of the holistic realm and that side. And then we hopefully partner with a conventional vet that's open to what I'm doing. But the thing is when they start seeing your pets improve, even if they weren't open to it, you're planting a seed, and it may not change over the next year. However, the nice thing is that they're going to see your pet doing really well. It's just like when you walk in and your vet's like, wow, what are you feeding your dog or your cat? Their coat's so shiny. They look so good. They have no dental disease. And you're like, I'm feeding a raw food diet. And they're like, oh my God, you're going to kill everyone. Your dog's going to die. And you're like, wait a second, So, but what they're seeing is a healthy pet. They're seeing normal, healthy blood work. They're seeing you overcome these diseases with potentially zero or little conventional medication. And that's going to help change and shift where we're at right now, where people don't want to hear it. They don't want to learn. They're going to be forced to learn, though, because more and more pet parents are like the amazing people here, empowering themselves with the education and the tools and asking for better. And that's how we're in a movement. Sometimes it feels really slow, but we're in a movement. So, and it's changing and it's shifting on the human side too, which is really helpful for the pet side.
Yeah, it is definitely. And what a good, when you say, a lot of people will not tell their vets that they're feeding a raw diet. They keep it quiet. They hush hush. They don't say anything. And they do that because they don't want the backlash. But then the pet gets better. And then we have.
So one of the things on that situation, one of the ways you can word that to make it less scary to your vet is go, oh yeah, we've been feeding a fresh food diet.
Yeah.
that is balanced by integrative veterinarian. So I'm making sure I'm getting all like the balance right, all the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, and they're feeling really good on it.
Yeah.
So rather than just saying like they're on a raw diet, your vet goes, oh my God, they're probably just feeding meat and that's it.
Yeah.
And their minds just go wild with like, angular limb deformities and calcium issues and broken puppy, like all sorts of things. We've seen a lot of stuff where diets go wrong, and that's where they go. But if you word it like, yeah, we're feeding a fresh food diet, still a fresh food diet, whether you're cooking it, lightly cooking it,
Right.
or you're feeding a raw food, or you're feeding a processed, lightly cooked, or, one of the pre-made options, you're feeding a fresh food diet, and it makes it less scary for your veterinarian.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I have tried for a really, really, really long time to get people to not call it a raw diet, because it really doesn't encompass what we're talking about. It implies that it could just be raw meat, and that is what, so such a good point to the language we use when we communicate with our veterinarians, because I know our listeners and your clients are not feeding the raw diet that vets think they're feeding.
Yeah, it's
So,
like, yeah, it's actually balanced. And
right,
I
right.
mean, yeah, you can have I mean, this is where education is important, but most veterinarians are assuming, I mean, we have statements, consensus statements out that we shouldn't be recommending raw food diets because of E. coli and salmonella poisoning. And this is where, in like the book that I shared, the Feeding Dogs book, like
Yeah,
they debunk those myths
yeah.
100%. And there's so many more studies coming out too. So the University of Helsinki, uh,
Helsinki.
yeah, I always say it wrong, but
I always
they're
say
doing a ton of research on raw fed pets, and they're looking at their microbiomes, they're testing their blood work, and they're also comparing it to kibble fed pets. And there's so much research coming out. This is where your vet will have to shift the way they think because we're studying it. And so the thing that there's no science behind this comment is not going to fly anymore, because we have a lot of science to showcase how these pets are benefiting from fresh food diets.
Yeah, a lot of stuff is starting to come out. Even the flea and tick argument. I mean, I have known about the flea and tick way before the FDA started reporting on it. Way before we started
Mm,
seeing videos of dogs having seizures and reporting on it. But it took forever. But there's going to come a time when these vets have no choice. There's just
mhm.
no choice but to look at the new studies that are coming out and what's happening. So it's very exciting that people are spending the money to do these studies, because for years we've had to say, look, it's really hard to put money into a study on fresh food diet, because where do we make the money from?
Yeah.
And these, right? I mean, so it's exciting to see that other countries are starting to say, you know what, we're gonna find the money and we're gonna do these studies for you, and it's just so exciting to see that,
Yep.
because we need them,
Yep.
and they make a difference, and that's why we need to present those to our veterinarians, and we need to use better language and say different things. What about, I know one of the big challenges my clients are having is the spay and neuter argument.
Mm,
So how do you think a client can, so I'm telling my clients mostly, like, if you can go, 2 years, I think it's great if you can go that way. I don't know what you recommend to your clients, but but when you have a vet who says, oh no, they're going to get aggressive, they're going to get fat, they're going to get cancer. How does it, like, if we could role play, if I came into you and I said, I want to wait till my dog's 2 years old, and you were a conventional vet and you were against that and thought my female would get breast cancer, how
mhm.
would I respond back if you told me that?
So this is where preparation. So Morris Animal Foundation has a ton of studies. And so this is where you can actually show them that, yeah, the risk of breast cancer is minimal compared to the risk of things, especially if you have a larger breed dog, the risk of bone cancer, the risk of splenic tumors, the risk of joint disease. And so this is where you can show them those studies and go, super open to having that conversation. However, I would love for you to take a look at these studies if you're not already familiar with them, because this is what I prefer to do for my pet. And one of the things that I always talk about too is you can't reverse surgery. Like, you can't reverse some of these things. And so if you take time to wait and assess, you can always say to your vet if they're saying they're going to become aggressive, you'd be like, totally appreciate your viewpoint. However, what I'd like to do is wait and see. And I'm not saying that for like waiting for disease to occur, but I want to wait and see how they do and support their bodies and see if we can get closer to that 2-year mark, because we can always do this earlier if we need to.
Yeah.
And then that way you're addressing their concerns, you're keeping them in the conversation, but you're also giving your viewpoint and your opinion. That's the most important thing to you and your pets. But having those studies too is really helpful,
Yeah.
because there is, like, Morris Animal Foundation just did the Lifetime Golden Retriever study, and there's a lot of that information came out of there. Colorado State University also has studies that they've done. So there are studies to back you up if you want to wait. And, it's one of those things where there is a risk of pyometra for a female, intact females. So infection of the uterus. But, being aware of what to watch for. And if you're finding they're having irregular heat cycles, that may be a sign, like, oh, for one, I'd be looking deeper, like, what's going on with the hormones, what's off in the body, what's off in the gut health, why are these things irregular? So you can figure out the root cause of why that's happening, but you can always spay them if you're worried. And the thing too is that we have a lot more information, but if you're super stressed about waiting, so you're just worried, like, you're like, oh my gosh, there's going to be breast cancer, there's going to be a like, you are worrying yourself to death, right? And, like, not a good thing. That's creating a lot of stress in the household, which can lead directly to gut health issues and
Right.
health issues in general. So you also have to weigh up, like, how do I feel about these decisions and waiting? Because sometimes the decision to do something comes down to that, because the impact of you waiting and stressing is going to be bigger than, like, waiting to do a surgery or something else.
Yeah. I think that's the hard thing, is that we get these situations like the spaying, for example, like you're talking about, because pyometra can kill a dog, and so can breast cancer. And so you really do have these two things you have to address, and you're right, sometimes you just have to make that decision. So Janelle had a really good question. She says she about medicinal mushrooms, she says she does steam them, but why should they be steamed or cooked and not raw? Can they be juiced raw?
Interesting. I've never heard about juicing mushrooms.
I hadn't either.
Yeah, so that's interesting, Janelle.
You can juice a mushroom.
You can actually feed them raw. You're fine. You can definitely feed them raw. I would say if you've got your dehydrated, you want to rehydrate them. But a lot of times what we're doing with vegetables is we are steaming them or very lightly cooking them to break down, like, the cellulose, the plant cell wall, right? To make it easier for our pets to digest. I use medicinal mushrooms in both dogs and cats. And cats, an easy way to get them to eat mushrooms is you can finely dice them and you cook them in a little bit of grass-fed butter, and then you add them onto their meal as like a meal topper. Cats love that. So by doing a little bit of grass-fed butter, it's going to increase the likelihood that they eat it. But I don't know about juicing though. So I feel like I'd have to look into, like, if you're not consuming the whole mushroom, if you're not getting all of the nutrients that you're wanting when you use medicinal mushrooms. Don't know that answer. It'd be something I'd have to look into, but I feel like juicing them is another extra step that you probably don't have to take in order to, like, gain the benefits from the medicinal mushrooms.
Yeah. I of course want to look up juicing of mushrooms, because I didn't know.
I wonder what it tastes like too. It would be interesting.
I don't know. I feed raw also. I have heard people say that you need to steam the mushrooms, but I just don't know. I've been giving my animals mushrooms raw for years and years and years and years. So anyway, grass-fed butter, way to go. Oh, Arlene. Yep. That's awesome.
Ghee is another thing that you can use too if you're worried about the dairy and your cat or your dog being sensitive. So ghee has the dairy removed from it. So it's a common ingredient in, like, Indian recipes and things like that. So
you're so amazing.
Well, I have a client, so it's amazing. So I do acupuncture quite regularly on one of my patients, and I do house consults for those. And so I go there and they have ghee sitting out, and they use it all the time to cook. And he's like, and I was watching the other cat, because he has got 3 cats. And the cat was literally just staring at the container, like from the floor. And I was like, what's he doing? And he's like, he's waiting because if we leave the room, he'll jump up there and knock it down and just start like eating it all. And I was like, oh, he likes his ghee. So
typical cats, right? Just waiting to knock something off the shelf. Whatever they can do to knock it off the shelf. I'm still struggling because I got 3 kittens at the same time, but they're coming up on their 1 year. And then my friend found that other kitten who's only about 12 weeks. So I'm like, why? I'm never going to be out of kitten stage at this rate.
no.
This is a video on medicinal mushrooms. Oh, Lori posted one. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, that is a good video actually. So what other things, like I know that spaying and neutering, vaccines, like how do we, I know we talk a lot about, bringing these studies in. I know Dr. Jean Dodds has some studies, but how, and of course the law is the law on rabies. Like we really can't, there's no real argument there too much, but how do we approach that? Like something like Bordetella, right? Like when you go to your veterinarian and, you maybe don't want to do the Bordetella vaccine. What are some of the ways that people you think could nicely get around that?
Yeah. So this is where having the conversation about like risks versus benefits. So I would say something like, I've been reading a lot about vaccines and I'm not sure if my pets need all of these. Can we have a discussion of like when they're beneficial? What is the incidence of dogs getting leptospirosis in this area that you see? Like how many dogs are getting sick? How many are you treating? So you're forcing them once again to own up to like, are we actually seeing cases of this? Rather than just saying, oh, you should do it because your dog can die from it. And that's scary, right? We don't want our dogs to die from a disease we can potentially vaccinate against. So having that conversation of, my cat doesn't go anywhere. Like they're in my home all the time. And, I understand the whole rabies thing, but for, your FERCP, your feline leukemia, like my cats will never be vaccinated ever again. Like they're here. Like there's nothing coming in.
Yeah.
Like they're not coming into contact with ferals or strays outside. And they don't go to boarding facilities. And so the risk of them contracting an infectious disease is very low. And so your pets, like your dogs, do you have a dog that spends most of its time inside and you go walking on like sidewalks? Do you live in like cities and you hardly go in grass? Like I have clients where they're like, we don't have grass around us because I live in a huge city. So is there a big risk of my pet getting like parvo or distemper? And this is also where too, you can ask your veterinarian to run titers. Now, the downside with that is a lot of vets will say we don't do titers, or they'll charge like $300 for a titer. But Dr. Lori Koger, Coger, she's actually doing titers that you can send to her. So if you can get a vet to at least draw the blood to run a vaccine. So a vaccine titer, for anyone that doesn't know what that is we can actually draw some blood and we can look at the antibody level in the body to actually see if your pet would be protected if they came into contact with, say, one of these viruses, so distemper or parvo. If they register as positive, even if they're low, it means that they're more than likely to have an appropriate immune response that will protect them from getting sick. So the way the immune system works is we have these amazing things called memory cells, and they're stimulated when we first give something. So say as a puppy, your dog gets the parvo vaccine. And so they produce antibodies. They're also producing memory cells. We can't measure memory cells in a titer. So this is part of a normal immune response. And what those memory cells do is that, say your dog's out sniffing and all of a sudden it comes to a patch where maybe there was a dog that had parvo, went to the bathroom there and that virus is still there. They sniff it, it gets into their body. So the body goes, wait a second, I know what that is. I can protect us. And those memory cells and the antibodies, they come into action and they increase in concentration. So if we were to test a pet at that time of exposure, we would see a really high level of antibodies because that's the appropriate immune response. But those memory cells can come out from hiding and go, okay, we're taking over, we got this. And that's the downside, is that we can't measure that from a titer. But if your pet has some level of antibodies, they most likely have memory cells also with their immune system. Your veterinarian to run. most vets have no idea. So have an idea of how the immune system works because they've long forgotten that. I mean, we did learn these things in vet school. It's like you memorize it, you test on it, and then you never go back to it because you're never taught about titers and how to think about things critically, right? Like, how does this work? What is a vaccine doing? Okay, we have these diagnostic tests we can do. Do we truly need to vaccinate every year, every 3 years, every 5 years, every 7 years? Because those don't run out.
Yeah.
And so that's where talking to your veterinarian and asking, what are the incidents of these diseases, getting sick? This is my personal situation for potential level of exposure. This is like our daily routine. This is where we go. And then asking them, like, based on that information, what would be the vaccines you would do for your own pet? And if they say like Bordetella, I mean, Bordetella is one of the easier ones because I don't recommend it. It's just one of the, at least it doesn't stimulate the immune system as much typically. However, every time we're stimulating the immune system, we're potentially setting up the body to have an overreaction because it's not just the only thing that's going into their body. We could potentially be including chemicals from food. There could be toxins in the environment. Those are all going to be stimulating the immune system. So, being able to say, no, I decline that one, because in reality, all you have to give is rabies. You could say literally no to everything else, and they have to respect that.
So as a boarding facility, I want to add something because I've heard it a couple of times. So I've had several clients over the years tell me, well, my vet, I'll get their vaccine records and I'll mark on there, just so you know, going forward, I don't require the non-core vaccines like this one, Bordetella. And they will say, well, my vet said that if I board my dog, I had to get it. So I just want to tell you that when the vet tells you that, I don't think they're lying to you. I think they assume that all boarding facilities require it. So you need to make sure you know that's not a law. Most boarding facilities actually don't have to require, in order for my kennel license, I don't have to require Bordetella. So I don't. Yeah. So make sure you check with your boarding facilities and your groomers. Don't just take the word of your vet that they are going to make you get it, and be ready for that, right? Because the vet may say that to you. And if you can come back and go, actually, my groomer doesn't require it, then you'll be that much more educating the vet that not all groomers and boarding facilities require it. So,
yeah, one of the, along that, one of the local dog groomers here in town where we are, she also does doggy daycare, and she accepts titers. Because I asked, I was like, do you accept titers? And she's like, 100%. She's like, you're a vet, right? Like, you're recommending those? And I was like, oh my God, I love you. So yes. So you, like you're saying, Carrie, it's, you ask who you're using, like, what do you recommend? So that way you are ready when you go, prior to going into the vet. So you can actually say, well, they don't recommend it, so I'm going to decline that one today, but I'll think about it.
But I'll think
about it like as I walk out the door, forgotten.
Yeah. So. But that's always the best. Like, I'll think about it is better than no. I'm not doing what you're trying to just get money out of me.
Yep.
Because wouldn't you agree? Vets really wholeheartedly believe that to protect your pet, they have to be vaccinated every year or every 3 years. They're being taught about these deadly diseases. And this is the answer to they think is the answer to the deadly disease.
Well, and we've seen, I mean, most of us have seen parvo.
Yeah, I have seen it. It's awful.
Yeah, and we've seen dogs die from it.
Yeah.
Some of us have seen distemper. They're really awful diseases. So, here's the thing, and I always go back to this with, talking about overall health. Vaccines can play a part, but if we're feeding trash diets, if we're not approaching having a healthy environment, if we're spraying pesticides and herbicides, if we're dousing our pets in chemicals for flea and tick preventative, if, there's so many different factors that are going to play a role in the overall health of your pet. And it's so easy to forget those, that we are ending up relying on these distemper parvo vaccinations to protect our pet, and that's not how health works. And so it's so easy to forget that because we don't always see the other things that play a part for overall health.
So this is such a great question. I get this a lot actually at work. I'm curious as to what you think. So I'm going to kind of this comes to me a lot in this respect. So if I have a dog, I'm going to use a fake dog right now who got his parvo vaccine when he was a puppy, got his series, so he's got all of those. Mm-hmm. And then let's just say he got it again at 3 years old. So, and we titered. Let's say we titered. Do you think that dog needs to be titered every 3 years or every year? Or do you think one titer would be sufficient for the rest of the dog's life? And let's just use parvo and distemper as the example.
So when we actually look at how the immune system works and what that titer actually truly means, if we have a positive titer, it's not like your body runs out of antibodies. So that titer is telling us they mounted an immune response. And there's studies like Dr. Jean Dodds, Dr. Rob, Protect the Pets. They've done studies to showcase that these vaccines last at least 7 or more years. And so, I mean, that's when the study ended. So I'm sure it continues on. That's just when the study ended. And so the problem is, though, so you shouldn't have to titer every 3 years. This is where the veterinarian is going, well, our vaccine protocol is every 3 years for distemper and parvo. So to show that they're still protected, I need you to at least titer every 3 years. So that's where that's coming from.
Yeah.
It doesn't really make sense when we look at the science behind it, and how the body and the immune system works. But it's better than giving another vaccine and overstimulating them and creating an issue. The other thing too with vaccines that I want everyone here to hear is that you should only be vaccinating a healthy pet. So if you are going in and your pet is sick and they're going, oh, they're not up to date, they're due for their, I hate those words. You're never like, it's like once again, your antibodies ran out. That doesn't happen. But so they're due for your vaccines. We can do that while you're here to save you time. And that's where you can go, my pet's not feeling well. I don't want to overstimulate the immune system. Let's wait on that one. And then we can always come back and have a conversation about it. Right. And so we can always do a recheck. And if your pet's healthy and doing great, like cancel a recheck. But, so it's one of those things where that happens all the time. And when I say healthy, if your pet has allergies, if your pet gets ear infections, if your pet has anal gland problems, if your pet is prone to having a sensitive stomach, if your pet has had cancer in the past, if your pet has heart disease, if your pet has kidney disease, if your pet has thyroid disease, Cushing's disease, endocrine disease, hormonal diseases, any type of issue, they are technically not healthy and they should not be vaccinated. I'm not saying they're not feeling good. However, they're not technically healthy, and per the vaccine label, they should not be vaccinated.
As you were naming off all of those things, I know I smirked, but not really. It's actually a sad one because so many of our animals are suffering from those diseases. It's not like this rare thing we hardly ever see, right? So it's like all these animals have all of these diseases that you're naming, and they're getting worse.
Normal, right? Like, they have seasonal allergies. It's like it should happen, and I'm like, no,
I know
the immune system's off. Why do they have seasonal allergies? What's going on there?
It's
like
awful.
Why are they obese? Your pet's obese. I didn't name that one. That's over 2/3 of pets.
Yeah,
your pet's overweight. That's a disease, and there's increased inflammation in the body. It's not just sitting there. So these are all like shifting our perspective of what health is and how we can better protect health is so important. And it's the game changer, right? That's the game changer to get our pets living to 20, 30 years old. And people don't think, I hear it all the time. Heard it yesterday with a client. Oh, well, they're 7. They don't have much time left. And I'm like, wait, your dog's 10 pounds, right? I was like, 7 is like literally just still the beginning.
Yeah.
Like we should be entering middle age. Your dog should be living to be like 25, 30 years old, potentially.
Can you imagine like a person being 40 and us saying, well, that's the end of like middle age, like 7. I agree with you.
Know.
I hate hearing that my dog's old and that kind of thing. So the titers is interesting to me because what's happening and why my question is so great is that now vets are starting to hear this titer all the time. And so they're offering these titers every year. I have people that are like, well, I don't want to do the vaccine, but I'll do the titer. And the titer is more expensive. It takes more time. You got to go in the vet and all this. So it's more expensive. But what is really interesting to me is I think we have a whole bunch of dogs running around that never even got the immune response. We should be titering after the vaccine.
Yep.
Give it a couple of weeks and then run a titer, because potentially you could go in, get a parvo vaccine for a puppy, and then take him to the dog park thinking he's protected, and he may never be protected.
Yeah.
And that to me seems like if we really want to protect him, I would, if I had a puppy and I was going to have him in an area where I knew parvo was really, like, I couldn't keep him away from parvo, you'd bet I'd be titering a couple weeks later to make sure it worked before I put him in that environment. But I don't know why we don't do that. We just assume that once the needle goes in, then we're good to go and everybody's protected. But I always think there's probably so many animals running around that aren't even protected.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at, I see disease in younger and younger animals every single day. And so we call those animals a non-responder. They're a vaccine non-responder. And the more, it's interesting. I mean, genetics plays a part for like 10%. However, we're seeing what's neat with all this research is that we're able to see like the mom's health, like the gut health of the mom, and the way that genes are potentially being expressed, the toxins that are also changing the way genes are expressed. So epigenetics, it actually affects 3 generations down the line. So we have a puppy now, like 3 generations down, who the mother was not healthy, was not eating healthy food, had poor quality gut health, was exposed to all these toxins. And now this puppy, who wasn't even like part of that generation, has all those repercussions. And now we're taking this weaker puppy that has poor gut health, poor immune health, and we're injecting it with like 5 different vaccines all at 8 weeks old. And it's no wonder that, then we see all sorts of health issues. We see diarrhea. All of a sudden we see IBD. God, the amount of animals I see with IBD at like 1 year of age, it's insane. The autoimmune diseases, and it comes down to those things. And you're 100% right, Carrie. Like, it should be part of like the puppy and kitten package. Like, okay, let's wait a little bit. Here's the things to support the immune system. Let's get gut health good. These are some supplements I recommend. Let's get them on proper species appropriate diet. Okay, now we're a little bit older. We know that we're past the time where the mother's antibodies block the vaccine from working. Okay, 1 vaccine, 3 weeks later, I'm going to have you come back in, make sure things are going well, and then we're going to titer. That's how it should look. And it's nowhere near that. It's like, here's your flea and tick medicine. Make sure they're on like your heartworm preventative. There's no like talk about what's going on in gut health, like none of that. And these poor animals, we're just setting them up for like a lifetime of having health issues, unfortunately, because we're not taking a proactive preventative care approach.
Yeah. I feel so bad for the puppies that go in for their first vet visit and they walk out with their crappy food, their flea and tick medication, their over vaccinated, their heartworm medication. I mean, they get the whole package. And I just think,
dewormer.
And the dewormer.
We didn't talk about that.
Yeah. So how do you, let's do it. Let's do dewormer. I just had a good friend of mine actually, and she bought a puppy. God knows where she got this poor puppy. It turns out this puppy has hookworm, roundworm, and tapeworm.
Ooh, she got it from not a very clean environment is where she got that puppy.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm like, God knows which puppy mill or something happened where she got this puppy. I don't know. So she already dewormed before I got
so here's the thing. So there's different types of parasites, and some can be, so roundworms can be passed from the mother to the puppy through the placenta. So we call that transplacental, or through the milk. So transmammary. So they can technically be born with intestinal parasites. And so this is where, though, you can actually test for intestinal parasites to see, do we need to deworm? And this is where too, if like for breeders also, if they're doing an appropriate job, they're testing the mother, they're deworming appropriately at the right time, so that, because this thing is that roundworms can encyst in the muscle, and then during pregnancy, it stimulates them to come out and they can infect the puppies. So there's an entire life cycle that can happen. So dewormers, there's a time and a place for them. So this is where you go in and you get pyrantel, so strongid, that yellow liquid. It's been around forever. It's one of the safer ones, which is good. But you can also, like, if you're like, I don't know if I want to do this, bring in a stool sample and have them check it. But better yet, you can actually have them send it to, if you're in the States, like IDEX runs a fecal antigen test, and it's more sensitive. It's an ELISA test that will actually see if there's an adult worm in your pet's gut. And so, because a lot of times those tests that they're doing in-house, where they're looking under the microscope, we're looking for eggs. So tapeworms don't produce eggs. We're not going to see tapeworms on that stool sample. And usually tapeworms are older pets too, because you get it from an intermediate host from, like, cats eating rabbits or birds, or, fleas are an intermediate host for tapeworms too. So those typically aren't in the young puppies. Unfortunately, your friend is different.
This dog is,
this is, so that's really important that we test to learn and identify. The other thing too is that hookworms, really bad, and they're becoming really resistant, and they stay in the environment forever. I was doing, actually, Lori Koger and I were doing a talk together this past Sunday, and with Rodney Habib about dewormers. And she was literally saying you have to remove the top 6 inches of your soil to get rid of hookworms.
Oh my gosh.
So this is where you have hookworms, you identify that, you are treating with your conventional medications. But this is where you can use natural remedies alongside that, and you need to be supporting gut health. It's not just like deworm and it's over. That gut health is not doing well. We need to build up the microbiome. We can use natural remedies. We can add in things like ground up pumpkin seeds that are natural dewormers too. So we can do other things to help our pets so that they're less likely to have more intestinal parasites because they have a unhealthy gut.
Yeah. That's what I ended up telling her. I said, no, because after it happened, she was like, oh no, I already let the vet do it, whatever. Because I had reached out to her when I knew she got a puppy, and I said, please contact me before you do any vaccines or any dewormers or anything. And then by the time it had, so I told her it's fine. But now, you adored beast, we need to get a healthy gut. You're going to have to fix the gut. Yeah. So, I mean, the good thing is she knew from a cat, actually, a long time ago. That's how she and I actually started talking about stuff. She had a cat get really sick from kidney failure. A cat was on kibble, and we managed to switch. So she's learned a lot about diet. So good thing is puppy went straight on to a great diet.
Awesome.
But now she's got to get that going. But it's so hard. You go in and right away, I know I had a client years ago. This is going to lead me into how do we communicate about dewormers? Because a lot of times this particular case had happened with a dog who we were dealing with yeast infections for years on this dog. She was trying to get it under control and then we finally got it under control through Adored Beast and a bunch of stuff we were doing. And then the dog got tapeworm, and she didn't say anything to me. She went to the vet, and the vet dewormed it. And don't you know, it was so fragile. It had taken it. It was right on the cuffs, and then boom, she goes in thinking I'm doing the right thing, a dewormer, and it set the dog back. Yeah. But how do you, I know we talked about saying studies, but how accurate do you think the tests are? So if your dog has tapeworm, or you think he has tapeworm, and you go into the vet and you say, well, I want to have the studies, or I want to prove that the dog has tapeworm. How do we communicate that we may not want to do a dewormer? Are there, like you mentioned, pumpkin seeds? Can we get rid of tapeworm with pumpkin seeds?
We actually talked about this, and this is where there can be some limitations with holistic medicine. So this is where if you are seeing like rice-like segments around the rectal area, like you most likely have a tapeworm issue. But that's where you can do that additional diagnostic test, that fecal antigen test. So you can bring in a stool sample, and that's going to be so much more sensitive than like your technician going in the back and looking under the microscope and hoping to see like an egg go by. And once again, tapeworms don't have eggs. So it's so difficult. And there's also intermittent shedders. Hookworms are intermittent shedders. So you're more than likely not going to see an egg on a slide if you have a hookworm infection. But hookworms can cause anemia, can cause, like, pets can get really sick and need blood transfusions. That's how serious those infections can be. And so this is where do the test. Do, if you can. I know not everyone can. I don't know what the cost of that test
Right.
is, but at least you can ask your vet. Barring that, bring in a couple stool samples from different times to see if you can get that intermittent shedding. You're trying to see, like, if you do have a hookworm problem, that's where you're more likely to see an egg. So it's better than nothing. But this is also where, rather than just like for puppies, this is common where you go in and they just assume, like with our puppies, we just deworm them every 2 weeks and that's what we do. And you can say, well, I'd rather test. So let's do these tests first. And you bring in the stool and that's what you say. I'm going to test first and let's see if we need to deworm and then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
And this is also where to, if you have an intestinal parasite issue, so tapeworms, sometimes you do have to use those stronger dewormers. But this is where we're not using ones that are the newer products that have been around for a long time. So things like pyrantel, things like fenbendazole, that are going to be a bit safer for your pets if you have to use them. And then once again, I use things like binders. So we're binding to the toxins and when those parasites are being broken down to get them out of the body. We're also supporting detox pathways. And like you mentioned, Carrie, we're doing things that are going to help heal leaky gut and repair the gut lining. Because if you think about a tapeworm being attached to your gut lining, sucking all the nutrients and eating
Yeah.
all your food, not a good thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, sometimes you don't want to wait and like try, sometimes you can feed like 5 pounds of pumpkin seed and it's not working.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you need to use some of these stronger dewormers. And I may be different than other like integrative holistic vets, but this is where like what's happening long term. Are we going to have more vitamin mineral deficiencies? But there are things like your pumpkin seeds. There are things like using digestive enzymes, apple cider vinegar. There's also plants that contain berberine or using berberine itself have great antibacterial, anti-parasite properties. Using Oregon grape root is another great one. There's homeopathic remedies that you can also utilize too. So I would say for people who are like, I really don't want to use a drug, try those, but make sure you're testing to identify if you're truly getting rid of the parasite. So you're not just assuming there's not a problem.
Do you think that the binders are good for getting toxins out of the liver as well?
100%. So we do a lot of hair tissue mineral analysis tests. Every single pet that we've tested hundreds now, they have heavy metals. We all have heavy metals. So this is also where we can use binders. So when I refer to binders, these are going to be things like, so zeolites, humic and fulvic acid, clinoptilite. They're minerals from the earth that energetically they actually bind to like the positive negative charges. So they'll grab a toxin, they'll grab a heavy metal and pull it out of the body so it doesn't get recirculated. Now there's different phases of detox. So this is where if you're feeding a poor quality diet or it's not balanced long term, it's low in nutrients, there's vitamin mineral deficiencies, we need B vitamins in the liver for those detox pathways for them to work properly. So to like activate enzymes that are necessary. We need good gut health. We need good kidney health because where are those toxins going? So say we clear them from the liver, right? And we use things like milk thistle. But then those toxins get to the gut and the gut is sluggish and it's not working well. What does the body do? It goes, oh, can't do this. It recirculates back, it goes back through the liver and then it gets deposited in the fat, bones, muscles, and you're back to like your pet had to like reprocess those toxins again. So this is where looking at all the different phases of the body and all these different areas that are interconnected from a holistic approach are essential, especially when we do talk about detoxing. So your binders are one part of that process, making sure we're feeding them good quality nutrition, that we're supporting that gut health, that we're optimizing skin health. Those are all areas where those are detox pathways in the body.
You're so amazing. I told you guys. I told you. This is why I have this group of vets that I recommend because I know how important it is to have, this available to everybody. Is that why lactose is helpful to clear the gut? We won't keep you too long, but you got that question?
Yeah. So lactulose is a laxative. So it's going to make things move faster. However, it's it's kind of like a sugar. So let's think about if you have a microbiome issue. So microbiome, when I refer to that, that's the collection, the trillions of bacteria, protozoa, fungi, cells that make up the gut health, right? The microbiome. It's the ecosystem that hopefully is in good balance. Now, what can happen, and it's interesting. So I've been doing a lot of testing myself. And I don't know, Carrie, if you've ever done like a SIBO test.
No.
Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth test. So we're getting all these crazy tests done just to see like where am I and what can I better optimize.
Yeah, I need to
You
do
have
one.
to drink lactulose. So what it's looking for is an overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine. And you actually drink lactulose, and it's essentially what it's doing is it's feeding the bad bacteria. And so then you breathe, like we can't do this test with pets because I haven't figured out a way to get them to breathe into the little thing that you have to do. It'd be the coolest thing ever. But it's measuring like the different gases that different types of bacteria produce. So like methane gas. And if you are producing too much of that, they can identify you have SIBO, you have this overgrowth of bad bacteria. And so it was interesting doing this test because I was like, I drank it. And then I was like, oh, it's like, oh no. And I get like burpy and stuff. I was like, I probably have SIBO. And so it's just like, but like, so when I look at lactulose, we use it a lot for like cats when they're constipated. And there's so many other better options that we can use. We can use coconut oil. We can use psyllium husk. We can use, there's just so many other options that aren't going to feed the bad bacteria potentially, because so many pets do have overgrowth. They have what we call dysbiosis. So I would be looking at something different to help, like when we clear the gut, like we're not looking to speed things up, right? Because there's a reason why we have peristalsis in a certain way. The digestion should work, over a certain time frame for us to absorb the nutrients, feed the good bacteria. So when I think about optimizing detox pathways, because that's probably where this is coming from, like we're making sure that the gut is working the way it's supposed to. We're not using things that are going to aggravate it to create more inflammation. So then it's just like dumping everything. When we detox, we should not see detox reactions, people or pets. If we're seeing detox reactions, I'm like, for one, are we using binders? Are we doing too strong of something? Is a pet reacting inappropriately to something? We should be doing it slowly and doing it in phases. And so that's where I see a lot of pet parents, they say, oh yeah, they were having a detox reaction. And I'm like, okay, well, what were we missing? What weren't we optimizing? Like we shouldn't have to have our pets be like super uncomfortable and have diarrhea and red irritated skin and all those things for them to heal their bodies. It just means we need to take a slower step back, or we need to take a step back and move forward more slowly while we're strengthening their body so they can handle it.
That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense, actually. And good to know, right? That they don't have to go through that horrible detox.
Well, and we shouldn't either. If you're being detoxed appropriately, you shouldn't feel like crud for weeks and weeks, right? And so it's interesting. I wonder if actually they're referring to lactulose, if it's binding like excess urea in the body, if there's like kidney disease and other things and other toxins, we're using it as a binder. So I wonder if so fiber can also, so yeah, I'm kind of understanding what the question they're asking.
It's getting, because she's doing a lot of research. I know she's actually a client of mine. She has been for years, but and she's got a newer dog that's been diagnosed with this, and so she's just in the beginning stages of. She's doing such a great job. This is what we talk about.
Yes.
Do all the research you can. Get as many vets behind you as you can, and we're up on our little bit over our hour that I always promise not to keep you guys too long. But this is one of the things, I'm going to take away from this is how important the pet parent is. One of the things we get a lot of complaints about is there's not enough holistic veterinarians. How do we get holistic veterinarians? I think we get them through our pet parents educating them and giving them books at Christmas time. And, so even though Dr. Woodley and I started this off saying we want to teach you how to communicate with your vet, I think more importantly, we really want you to communicate with your vet to help get them to come to the other side.
Yeah.
Like we didn't start out like that, but the more I think about it, I'm like, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take someone like Dr. Roman, when you think about how she wouldn't be on this path if it wasn't for that book she was given. So, I just think it's been so great listening to you talk about how much better, and I hope it's empowered all of you to know that you can communicate with your veterinarians who are conventional, and don't run away from them. You need them. You need them more than you know, because there is a long line going out the door for the holistic veterinarians. You guys are overwhelmed, right?
Yes, I mean the entire we have a shortage of vets.
Yeah.
It's not going to get
Yeah.
any better, and so learning to kind of work together and continue to
And
support one
communicate.
another. But yeah, there's definitely not enough holistic vets. So,
Yeah.
but
Or
this
like
is
you said, regular vets, which is
yeah,
why I just think you have no idea how much I love that you're willing to give up an hour of your time to come here and help, because a lot of people can't even get into any
yeah,
vet. And sometimes just having this conversation helps ease people's mind, gives them something to think about, something to research.
yeah.
Lori's been so great at giving you guys all of the ways to contact. Dr. Woodley, you do consultations though, right? Phone consultations?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're actually shifting to, because there's such a long line that we have I mean, we're booking into August now. And so it's one of the ways that I had to consider, how can we help more pet parents, right? Because people have it, like there's problems, there's things that they need solutions, they're in pain, their pets, like sitting and watching your pet be in pain or sick is not a fun thing for anyone. And so one of the things that we've created is we've actually have a program where we teach people how to take all of those different areas of health and optimize them for your dogs and cats. So essentially, you're learning how to create a holistic lifestyle for your pets, how to create those balanced diets, how to assess like detox. When do I need to do it? How do I do it? How do I assess emotional health? How do I get the tools I need to also support myself? And also a lot of the conversation that we had going even deeper into like endocrine and hormonal health and ways that we can support our pets' bodies, tests that you want to ask for at the vet clinic. So giving you those tools, but we also do weekly Q&As. So that way you can come and ask specific questions, get more guidance right away, rather than waiting weeks for your vet to be able to see you.
Yeah.
And there's a community aspect. It's a very safe place to ask those questions. There's never any shame. There's never any, like, no one should ever feel any guilt, or like the goal is to help empower people so that you feel supported, you feel confident in being able to implement a holistic lifestyle. And it's a lifetime program. So like once you're in, you're just part of the family. Like I get to learn all about you, your family. It's wonderful. And it's been a real pleasure to me to be able to like see people grow, see pets heal too. From when we first started doing this back in September, it's so neat to see pets that had major health issues, and just by following the tactics and taking action and implementation and asking the questions, they've actually been able to heal their pets when they were told like, your pet's messed up, they're never going to be better, like you've done all you can, there's nothing else you can do. And they've been able to find like hormonal health issues and learn how to heal those. Like it's incredible.
Yeah.
And so that's my gift, to be able to like, oh my gosh, let's bring people in, support them and help them, and everyone wins. I love teaching. I love seeing the changes and the transformations. And now it's a different way of approaching health, and the way versus just a one-on-one to help people.
How do they? I'm so glad you're doing that. I had a client the other day in one of my orientations. I do a group orientation before people can come to me. It just helps. And her dog has diabetes, but she's so. I love that you're saying like support you in a safe place so that you might be able to do some of this stuff on your own, because she's really scared. You know, she has this dog who has diabetes, and she has a vet who's telling her, this is your only way. Insulin and Hill's prescription diet is the only thing you can do. And so I tell, she wanted to come to me and do a nutrition consult. And I said, no, I need you to have a vet behind you, because what will happen is, while I can give you a good diet, you're going to go back to that vet and say, the groomer told you to feed this, and your vet's going to win because your vet has the degree. So I need to put a vet behind you so that the vet can, in fact, I think I did give her your name. And so I think she's going to be contacting you, because you do need to have a group, right? When you have somebody telling you this is the only thing, and then another person telling you something different, it's scary. It's so scary. And a lot of times the pet ends up losing out of fear, not out of what the right choice is. So does Lori have the right thing up here for
You'll be able to see it. So what we do too to make sure it's a good fit for you is I jump on a call with you. It's essentially like an interview to make sure it's a good fit for everyone. So there's actually, I can share, there's a link on my front page down at the bottom, Lori, that you can share. It's a Calendly link that you can connect with me and figure out if it's a good fit. We do have a webinar also that we just did. I don't have, it literally talks about the program. So what I can do is I'll share that in the comments afterwards in this group. So people have access to that, and you can watch a free. It literally went for 2 hours, so it's supposed to be 45 minutes. It didn't work. So
I can never. I'm always like, I don't want to keep it. Look, we're at 5:13, and I'm like, I'm so sorry.
Well, I'm just as bad. I love it. So
I do too. I love when I do my orientations. People call and I'm just talking about my facility because I like you. Is it a good fit? Because it may not be.
Yeah.
You have to know that I don't require Bordetella on any dog. So if your dog comes there, other dogs might not have a Bordetella vaccine. So we do that conversation. And I always tell people, oh, it'll be about an hour. It's I did 3 hours not too long ago because people ask questions, which I love. I'm just like you. If I can educate, I'm happy. I'm so
that's
happy.
the way forward, right? And the thing is too, the problem with the way the world is, it's great that we have a lot more tools and knowledge, right, that we can research. But then how confusing is it to navigate that space on your own and start implementing? And so many people come to me because they read something and they're like, I was too scared to start it. And then what happens is they feel overwhelmed and they stop. They stop taking action, and they're, like you said, their pets stay in the same place. So that's why I wanted to create a program where you have the support of a holistic vet where, I don't always claim to know everything, but I will research it and look it up if I don't have that answer and come back to the community and the group, and being able to like share when you're going through a rough patch and have the support of people and be able to share your wins. Like, we are lacking that in the world today. And so it's really nice to come together and learn how to create these healthy pets that live, to 20 and 30 years old while having the support of a vet. Is, you don't get that from your vet. You get an appointment, then you have to wait. And it's just nice to be able to ask those questions right away and get guidance and support as you're reading it, as you're doing it, so you can take action and get transformation.
Yeah. My goal now, I just want to see the 30-year-old pet. Like, I know I just want to be on this earth because I know it can happen. We know it can happen through Maggie and Bowie. We've got them. They're there. It's happening. We just have to get it, shifted. So, and it's people like you that are going to make that happen for all of us to see that in our pets. I don't know that it'll be this generation of pets, but I'm hoping in the next couple of generations, we're going to keep creeping up.
I know. I've got it's dinner time. This will be interesting. This might be chaos. She doesn't enjoy the one on the ground. So.
Oh yeah, I have that issue.
If they're gonna. I apologize if they're screaming. The third one's in the hallway, so waiting for his dinner.
I have 2 of mine. They do the same kind of thing, and I'm like, I just let him.
I'm like, whatever. She's super dramatic, so he just looks at her and she cries, like he's killing her, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so dramatic.
I didn't even touch you. So, any last words?
Yeah, I always go back to start with one small thing. Like, it can be really overwhelming when you start listening to all the different factors of health, and literally just taking one small step makes a huge difference. And so I always challenge pet parents to find that one thing. Maybe it's adding the medicinal mushrooms on the topper, or, looking at asking for a titer, empowering yourself to be like, I'm doing this the next time I go in. That's a huge step. And so what is the one thing that you can start implementing today or at your next vet visit that's going to make a change in your pet's life? So that's what I always want to leave people with.
No, that's really good. That's really good. Just find one thing and start there. I think that's a great thing to end this on. Thank you again so much for your time, your knowledge, your passion, which I think it really is. It is just, it just glows out of you how passionate you are about helping animals. And it's just, I know this all started with a journey with your husband being sick, and you know, things, I know sometimes people are like, things don't happen for a reason, but sometimes they do. And
they happen for us, you know?
yeah. Yeah.
So.
So thank you and your husband for being on this journey with you together to lead us to these healthier pets. So I just want to thank you very much for being here.
Yeah. Well, Carrie, I always like what you're doing is making a huge difference in this world. So bringing us all together. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I truly appreciate it.
I'm just hoping that I get the, you know, we have the expo and, but I'm going to get it to be a 2-day so I really want it to be, because we have, you know, on the East Coast, but we have nothing really out here. And I'm like, if I can get this thing going and keep us kind of on the West Coast over here, I'm in. We're just, this is our first one and we'll see. But, you know, whatever I can do, I don't know. I don't know. So
yeah, I know we need one in the middle too. The Colorado.
We do. Well, we have the Chicago.
No, that's really far from us though.
Yeah. Oh, you mean in Colorado?
Colorado, yeah. So like something in the I mean, we're technically west also, but you know, having something kind of in this area.
Let me know when you want to do it. Maybe we'll start.
We should actually organize. I would love to organize something like that for later on in the year, or you know, at the start of next year or something. That'd be great.
Yeah, we'll talk about it because change isn't going to happen unless we all work together, which has been a big problem, right? Because people start to keep fighting.
I know it's an interesting world, but you know, I like the idea though, like being able to teach people and help them. That is how things change and how we continue to show up and be advocates for our pets. And seeing that more and more people are wanting this is definitely, once again, that movement, and every single person here is part of that.
Yeah. That's the other thing. I want to thank you guys so much for showing up on Wednesdays. We're growing this community little by little. Lori and I, you know, decided to do this a few months back. Then I had everybody knows, a little bit of a glitch that set me back for the last month or so, but we're back on Wednesday nights. So we're going to keep continuing to grow. And you guys are a big part of that. We can't get these vets to change without communicating with our veterinarians and changing. So I hope tonight gave you guys the right answers and tools. So when you're out there talking to your conventional veterinarians, don't attack them, please. Please don't attack them. We can't lose any more vets. We have a vet shortage. So be nice and bring a book.
Yeah, just bring a book.
Bring a book. Peace offering. Peace offerings. Lori, thank you so much for typing all this in as quick as you can. It's valuable information. I am a slow typer, and I want the vets to be able to just think about their answers so they give you guys the best thorough answers. Although I think Dr. Woodley can do both. You're amazing.
I'm kind of used to it by now. I'm used to it.
It's amazing. So we will see you guys next week. Everybody take care. Thank you, Dr. Woodley. Have a good night.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.